Thank you, David. Okay, so I am going to speak about, and I made a few changes last minute because I was inspired by some of the things I heard in the keynotes yesterday and this morning. So I kind of made some changes to fit into that. But what I'm speaking about is humanizing the world's most boring brands. And I think I'm an authority in this space, not to brag, but I've been called by many people a boring subject matter expert. So I'll take that as a compliment. Right now, and for the past year at least, we've been in a crisis of trust, at least here in the United States, I would say. I don't know about Russia and China, probably not, but I'll only speak to the US. But we're dealing with, we have a lot of our government leaders who either we don't trust to be honest with us, or we don't trust they have the competency to get us where we need to go. And I think we all really felt that during the government shutdown not too long ago. It just took I think it wasn't, it wasn't shut down for over 24 hours before one of those mall Halloween stores moved in. That's what happens, it's change. But we're having challenges with our government, with the brands that we trust. You know, this is just one of many headlines. This is from this morning. The CEO of Wells Fargo is being called to testify at the hearing in March. So, you know, there are so many brands that we feel like we can't. We just don't feel safe. And then there's, of course, you know, our smart speakers that are spying on us, or claim to. And then Facebook, you know, I think nothing says trust like a photo like this when you see the CEO testifying, and he's had to do this a couple of times. And the fiscal quarter after he testified, this was the impact. They had the largest drop in market cap in the history of the stock market. So it's having a big impact, and it has a lasting impact as well. We have a lot of memes that come out. This is one of my favorites here, where some kid's telling Zuckerberg, "My dad told me you're spying on us." And Zuck says, "He's not your dad." I just think that's super genius, and I think it's a brilliant way to use humor to make the point. You know, if you try to make that point without humor, it would take you about 3 or 4 sentences to explain what's going on, but with comedy, boom, you cut right through all the noise. So I think this is a good time where we need to say, all right, as marketers, we have to change things, and we need to really think about and remember that people, they don't feel safe right now. And that needs to have impact on how we communicate with them and everything that we say. And we need to get away from just talking about buzzwords and find out a way to connect with them. So I loved what David said in Fandom this morning here, is an organization's ability to build meaningful human connections will bring success. And that's what we need to focus on. And this is so difficult for us to do in particularly in B2B, but for any brand, and particularly marketing. You know, our being is all about talking about us, bragging about our products, but we need to shift that into saying, how can we connect with people? One of my favorite quotes here is by George Bernard Shaw. If you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you. There's a lot of power and just a tremendous amount of truth in that quote, and I just hope, all I want to do today, I'm not expecting people to walk out of here and become comedy writers, but I'd love to share a few ideas on how comedy can help you connect with empathy and start working and strengthening those muscles to learn how to be honest and vulnerable. And comedy is just the perfect fit for that. One of the challenges, I talked about some of the challenges that get in our way this morning, and one of them, along with the committee, is the brand team. How many of you all have a brand committee you need to go through to get approval on stuff? Okay, so they have a job. It's a very important job. It's to guard the brand. The problem is that unfortunately, it's like, okay, how do you measure that? How do you measure if this is consistent with the spirit of our brand? Well, it's very difficult to do. But what's easy to do is say, well, does it have our colors? Is our logo on there? Do we have an executive there? Are we using the right font? None of that has to do with what the brand truly is, but that's what they can measure. And it really can hold up art. A lot of people didn't know that Leonardo da Vinci, when he painted the Mona Lisa, he had to go through the brand committee, okay? And his first round of notes, after he showed them the draft, is what they said. You know, colors off brand, where's our product? and she looks like a dude. The Mona Lisa in the Louvre, there's over a million pieces of art in the Louvre. The Mona Lisa is the only piece of art where they had to create a mailbox for her. And people actually write letters to the Mona Lisa. They are so emotionally moved. Now think about that. You have an artist working on this, and then somebody from the brand team comes in and says, you know what, are you locked into those colors? You know, it gives you notes, someone who has no experience on that. So we just got to work with our culture at the office to get people to open up and say, you know what, we're trying to do some different things here, and we do need to create a place where it's safe to experiment and try new things and explore. So let's figure out together how we do that. And go build those relationships now. If you don't know your brand team, go build the relationships with them. Take them to coffee, understand how they're measured on success, and think about what you can do to help them look successful and be successful, and see how you can do that and build that into your program as you move along. And you know, Andrew talked about this yesterday, about the complexity in our buying cycle and how long our buying cycle is into B2B, and how that makes us feel like we really have to be buttoned up and analytical and you know, market through white papers and that kind of thing. And unfortunately, we believe that everything we communicate needs to be that way, because we think we're just communicating with a committee. But that's not the case in B2B. If you look at the data here, 74% of all people who read B2B blogs are people. Okay, and I know some of you are doubting that, and that's fine, so I'll put it in a pie chart. It always adds credibility. But, you know, as far as I know, I don't think it's committees you know, who sit down and read it. You know, 12 people sit down and read a blog together, or check their Facebook page and their feed and that kind of thing. We are connecting with these people as individuals. And that's how we need to consider our marketing and content marketing and the things that we develop on reaching out. I do get a lot of data, and I have to fight a lot of battles about the surveys and the data that say, here's what we need in marketing. And I get a lot of arguments on why we shouldn't use humor for our brand. So what I did is I put my own survey in the field and just said, you know, do you like to laugh? And the numbers are pretty good. So that's kind of big data at work there. I think if people say, listen, you know, laughter's not for our brand doesn't like laughter, ask if your customers like laughter. And then think about that. Bring that up to the brand team. And what I like to do is kind of slowly over time show the brand team some successful emotional pieces that connect in B2B and send that. It's kind of a constant drumbeat of letting people think, here is the power of really connecting with emotion. I already said that. I'm sorry, that's redundant. Well, read it again, I'll get some water. How about that? So now let me get into the humor and where that plays. I studied improv. I totally stumbled into all this. In '98, there was a calling. It was just like at one moment, this epiphany, I realized, okay, I'm supposed to work in comedy. And that was a tough thing because I'm not really funny. And you know, you got to have qualifications for that. But over time, it started to come up. But it's just one of those things, it's like, okay, I have to do this. It's an obligation for me. And I was so scared to move forward. But a friend of mine said, all right, you know what you should do is go take an improv class. And I was in New York at the time working as an analyst, and she said, oh, go to Upright Citizens Brigade. So I went, there we go, we got some UCB folks here. So in '98, I went and I studied under these folks there. And that's the founders of Upright Citizens Brigade. That's Amy Poehler, the second from, well, she's the only woman up there, so. I didn't have to explain that. But so she was my instructor for the first 2 years. And you know what, I mentioned that really only to name drop, but I learned so much. I learned all these rules about improv and how it works and how it can change your life. And if you haven't taken a long-form improv class, if I can give you some homework, please go do that. Go do that. One of the great things is, I'm going to talk about Follow the Fear here next. This is Del Close, the founder of Long-Form Improv. He talks about Follow the Fear. And what he says is, like, when we're on stage, like if I'm here and David Meerman Scott comes up and we step out and we're doing an improv show, and David says, he lets me know he's an astronaut. Well, I'll have like 5 ideas will pop into my head right away. And listen, that happens to everybody. That you all have ideas that pop into your head. Believe me. The problem is that we all have an inner critic, okay, that tells us that's a dumb idea, that's a dumb idea, that's a dumb idea, don't do it, you're going to embarrass yourself. But when you become an improviser, you get comfortable with that. You're comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're comfortable with failing, and you're like, you know what, it's going to work out fine. One of the games in improv is like you take one suggestion from the audience, and then you would come out and you'd give a monologue. Okay, you just have to start talking right off the bat. And I remember my instructor telling me, she said, listen, this should feel like when you're telling this story, like I cannot believe I'm telling this story to people. I mean, it should be it's best when it's like a humiliating, embarrassing story. That's what it's all about. And that's because that helps connect with people. That's pretty powerful. Now, the first time I applied this in a business context is the one that David mentioned. And it was this video we did for IBM. Now, this was a project that I was absolutely certain would get me fired at IBM. And I'm not joking at all. I knew this would get me fired. And thank goodness for my best friend, Scott Teams, who filmed and directed this piece for me and edited it. He came on board, and I said, I just started IBM. I'd been there for like 3 months. And we were looking at the communication. I was a speechwriter. We were looking at the communication plans on like, okay, here's what we have to talk about the next year. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a comedy video to me. We ought to make a comedy video. And I pitched the idea, and like 7 executives said no. Everybody said no. It's like, we're at IBM. We don't laugh here. And I didn't want to get fired. I just adopted a girl and just got a job after working in comedy. And I'm like, man, I can't lose this job. And so I was quiet for a while. And then like about a week later, I just decided, you know what? I remember that follow the fear idea. It's like, I don't think I'm qualified, but I'm gonna go ahead and write this and let's see what happens. So I wrote the script, I showed it. And for some reason, just everybody said, okay, let's give it a try. But they didn't give me any money. So I asked my friend Scott, I said, look, if I give you $400 out of my own pocket, will you help me produce this? And he said, sure, I'll do it for you. And I remember telling my manager, I said, yeah, we're going to go shoot the video. And he said, well, how are you doing it? And I said, well, I'm paying my friend to do it. And he said, well, you can't, that's against policy. And I said, well, IBM's not paying anything. He said, yeah, but he's not on the approved vendor list. That's a fireable offense. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What happened to innovation? What happened to risk-taking? It was amazing. But at that moment, I realized I'm not going to last here too long. But we did it. I paid Scott $400, and thank goodness a vice president, Mike Fay, came through and got me $1,000 from an event company, and we paid him. And now Scott he's writing, his first feature film was in 2009. David was there for the opening, actually, at South by Southwest. And it won the South by Southwest Festival. It won like 10 festivals. And now Scott just finished writing the 4th season of Narcos on Netflix. I mean, the guy's amazing. He's really gifted. And I paid him $400 to make a video for me. All right? He wants more money now, but I'm like, that's too long ago, dude. I can't help you. But when you're faced with a budget challenge, you can go find somebody for less than that. Look, Amy Poehler is an improviser. 2 weeks before she got on SNL, you could have given her $100 to do a commercial for you, and she would have been thrilled. I mean, improvisers, they go, you shop at Goodwill, and I mean, you learn to live, in a very cheap way. So anyway, that's a great way to go explore new ideas. I think you should build your community by going and meeting like with a something, we'll pay you $1,000. And that's like $2 million for a college student. That's a lot of money. So explore that way. So this was a video we ended up doing, and like David said, it's ridiculous. It's just complete nonsense, but people paid attention to it because it came from IBM. And we got crazy coverage. Where's Mike Darcy, I think, is in here. He was PR at IBM at the time. There you go. Thank you, sir. And he got us a lot of press placements, so I owe you. I appreciate that. But Look at what the San Francisco Chronicle wrote about us. Look, this is a tone of keeping in a kinder, humbler image that IBM now seeks to project. None of our other marketing did that. But because we showed that we were, when a brand, I got this slide coming up later, but when a brand shows that it doesn't have to take itself seriously all the time, you know, it lets its hair down, now it's approachable. You know, now it's a little bit more likable. You know, think about it at a cocktail party. Do you like to talk to the person who's going to tell you, you know, just brag about the law firm they work for and blah, blah? You don't want to hear that. You know, you like to hear somebody who's going to be honest with you and is maybe genuinely self-deprecating and just doesn't think so highly of themselves all the time. There's also a great deal of confidence in that. Because if your brand can put a video out where they look silly, okay, there's vulnerability in that, but you also have to be very, very sure of yourself to be able to look silly sometimes. I want to talk just briefly about there are no mistakes, only gifts. I mentioned this earlier, and this really, I hope, this is what I've adopted in my life, and I've gotten comfortable. I have made some tremendous mistakes in my life, and I've been able to say, you know what, it's all going to work out. Like we had some changes, some last-minute changes on what's coming up next, and the gentleman back there would say, well, you look awfully confident. And I'm like, I'm not confident at all, you know, but I know it's going to work out okay. So this is a good life lesson. Go take an improv class and adopt this, and it's going to change your life. Here's some bullet points. I don't know why. I mean, people like bullet points. They don't think it's a real presentation unless they're bullet points. So this is from a comedy writing workshop for marketing people. And again, the idea is not to have everybody be comedy writers, but it's just to learn how to explore these ideas that you might be afraid of or that connect with people, because that's what comedians do. It's about learning how to connect efficiently and emotionally, because that's what comedians do. But I think comedy is one of the best ways to get through empathy, to connect through empathy, and I think that's really what we need right now, is to be able to connect with people with empathy and to just be understanding of people and accepting of people, because there's not a whole bunch of that going on right now, particularly in the U.S. So this is one thing I've learned both through comedy. I actually just went through a divorce about 4 years ago, and man, when you have two kids and you're trying to hold it together, and anyway, just like almost 20 years we were married, and I think we both knew it probably wasn't working after maybe the first year. Just didn't want to make any rash decisions. So, but we both were like, okay, yeah, this is not, you know, it's not working. It's funny. I had a therapist, and she told us that we went through therapy. Gosh, if I sure hope this doesn't happen to anybody in here. But if you end up doing that, try to keep the attorneys out of it and go to a therapist and get some help to kind of part ways in an amicable way, because it's so, oh my gosh, it's tough. I got to do a whole new comedy bit on that. But my therapist said, listen, here's your problem. Look, you feel undeserving. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. You don't feel like you deserve to be with someone who actually loves you. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that was tough to hear, but I knew right away she was exactly right. And starting to learn those things about yourself, you're like, okay, well, I have a choice now. You know, do I want to make this change or not? But look, there's things in my life where I felt shame, and in the last year or two, going through this process, this terrible, tough, emotional process, I've learned that everybody struggles with shame. That's the one thing that connects all 7 billion of us, is we're broken in some way. Every one of us is broken in some way. And then yesterday David touched upon this yesterday at the keynote yesterday afternoon, our first keynote, the fact that we are all broken in some way. And I think once you realize that, it makes it a lot more comfortable to kind of share your story and give grace to other people who are different than you. You know, and just be a little, it helps you connect and to share grace with people. So just a quick story on that is, these are my kids. This was a few years ago out in San Diego. That's Matthew and that's Katie. And my daughter is, she's almost 16. But back when she was 4th, 5th grade, she was going through a really tough time and was having these kind of outbursts. And I asked her permission if I could share this story. And she's a teenager now, so she hadn't gotten back to me. But I imagine next week I'll get that, shoulder shrug emoji that comes through. So She said it was fine. And she would act out, and she'd get very upset and act out. And it was a very tough time for us to work around and try to know how to support her. Went to a bunch of counseling and stuff. And I thought she needed more barriers, more boundaries. So I thought I needed to be a little bit more directive and kind of, monitor that behavior a bit more and have more rules. And that was a terrible idea. She hated me for that. She really did. And I think what happened is she was starting to see, okay, my dad doesn't like me for who I am. I think that's how she interpreted it. And I noticed that she would kind of withdraw from me. And if we went out with other adults and there were other adult males around, Katie would go and just hang on those guys and would just, soak up attention and just look to them. And man, I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have created a daughter with daddy issues. And I felt so ashamed. I thought, man, I've screwed this child up. And like I said, we were going to counseling, and I had a therapist who said, look, boundaries are important, but it's not the most important. When Katie's acting out, she's trying to connect with you. She's trying to tell you something. So put the discipline aside and just listen to her and connect with her. So what I would do is when she would act out, I'd just try to make her laugh. That was it. Nothing else mattered. I just wanted her to laugh. And so I would try to make her laugh, and we started connecting that way. And now I think I have one of the best relationships with my daughter than probably any other father at the school. Just because I've kind of set those things aside and I focused on how can I connect with you? What are you trying to tell me? And let me build a lasting relationship here. And the discipline, or not the discipline, but all that stuff can come later. But I think that's the most important. And it was a horrible thing to go through, but it's helped me connect with everybody else, because when I find somebody or hear about somebody who's struggling or broken, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to feel like you've made a huge mistake and messed your kid up for good. And I also know that it doesn't have to be for good, that you can recover. Now I take her with me on comedy shoots, and we do comedy together, and we do videos together. This was from a video that we did not too long ago with a friend. And then I take her to improv with me as well. Don't tell her mother this, but I do take her to improv, and it's not always family friendly. But what I learned through this process is this improv principle. It reinforces improv principle, that there are no mistakes, only gifts. And so I hope you all treat yourself right and have grace with yourself. And if there's anything you regret, trust that it's going to work out. Trust that somehow, this was said on the panel yesterday, the CMO panel, I love that. I think maybe Michelle said that. This trust that it's going to work out and it's going to serve you somehow, and it's not going to be a mistake. Okay, let's get into some comedy now. I'm sorry, I can't really afford therapy right now, so I got to have to take care of it here, but I appreciate it. All right, now I want to talk about some different approaches and show just a few different examples on kind of how you can apply this at your company and come up with a comedy idea for your B2B brand. This is absurd application is one. It's one of my favorites. And so think about your product and how that might fit in an absurd application, something totally ridiculous. And I'll just give you this example. This is what we did. This is what Dave was talking about, the ASR 9000. This is a few years ago. This is a juxtaposition exercise where you just write down ideas on paper. You keep your pen moving. And we'll go through one of these together here shortly. But we looked at all the things that, what was interesting about this router. And we got the engineers together and we really gave it a hard look. What's fascinating about this? Well, there was nothing. There's nothing interesting about it. And then we said, wait a minute, when are we launching this? Oh yeah, it's on February 9th, $250,000 router, launching on February 9th. You know what? Let's pitch this as a perfect gift for your Valentine. It makes sense. And again, because it was so ridiculous, we got some great coverage. David wrote about it in real time marketing. We got some coverage from the New York Times, and it was a top video on our corporate YouTube channel for I think about 3 years. So let me just roll this here.
How many ways can a man tell his sweetheart, I love you? Until now, the answer was 3. carve his initials into a tree, then carve a heart, and then carve her initial. But now, he can give her the ultimate expression of his everlasting affection. The Cisco ASR 9000. Because nothing says forever, like up to 6.4 terabits per second. Nothing says commitment, like up to 400 Gbps per slot. And nothing says I love you, like 6 times the mobile backhaul capacity. How many ways can a man say I love you? The answer is 4. The Cisco ASR 9000.
So, you know, completely silly. The marketing people weren't too happy with that, actually. And, but we still did it and put it up, and it worked. And actually, it's, at the end there, it says, "You're hot," that "you're hot" comes up. That got cut because, do you know why? That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we ended up putting just something dumb in there, but we could. It should have been "You're foxy" or something like that. But yes, in the data center, you know, the biggest problem CIOs have is too much heat in the data center. They're using too much electricity to power the air conditioning to put it down. So you're always going to run into things like that you need to change. And some make sense, some don't. But this is another slide that I stole from David this morning, and we put this up. We put this video up, and there was no call to action. There was no login to view. We just put it up on YouTube. And believe me, I had plenty of people at the office saying, no, it needs to be gated content. No, because we hit our customers all the time with a call to action. And yes, we got to have some return on what we do. I get that. But every now and then, if you just give them a gift and you say, look, I'm not asking you for anything. I'd just like you to laugh. Okay, we get it. Work's tough. Life can be tough sometimes. We just want you to laugh. If we can give you that gift of laughter, you know, hopefully we'll have a better connection going forward. Hopefully there'll be some grace there for us. Comedy comes from pain. This was one of the points there, and I think this is the best place to start brainstorming for everybody here, I would suggest. Because here's the thing. If we understand our customer's pain point, or what keeps our customer up at night, like Carlos said earlier, and we can express that in a humorous way and kind of tell that story maybe even better than our customer can, we've created empathy. Because our customer now understands, all right, you're not just pushing a product on me, but you understand my struggle, and you understand it so well, you're able to create it in an artistic way and make fun of the situation. And I love you for that. That's the kind of connection you can make. That's how you can make fandom in a very easy way, is starting off looking at the problem that the customer's facing. And then what I like, here we go, what I like to do is then heighten it. That's another improv technique, is you heighten it, you exaggerate things. Before that, of course, is you just kind of look at, okay, what would the world look like if we did not solve this problem? And then things just got worse, and you heighten it up to the level of Armageddon. You know, how could this actual problem end the world? And then you explore ideas there. We did one, Carlos Hidalgo, who's been here quite a bit. He just couldn't make it this year. He called me a while back and said, look, I want you to help me make a comedy video for a customer, for a client, a B2B client. I said, great, let's do it. I said, what line of work are they in? He said, data governance. I'm like, well, the comedy writes itself there, right? You don't have to do anything with data governance. So Carlos and the CMO, they did some interviews with the chief data officers. They reached out to the customers. That's unheard of in marketing, but sometimes it's good to ask your customer, hey, what's going on? And they did all these 2-hour interviews with chief data officers. And one guy said to him, you know what, there's some the challenge there with CDOs is they're trying to convince their CFO in the organization that, yeah, they need data governance, and here are the problems, and I need a budget for it. And it's not easy. And one guy told us, he said, you know what, there's some days I feel like I just can't get a break. And that resonated. Is like, man, that's the video right there. That's the series. So we took this, we made a character and as a CDO, and we didn't get into technology at all, but we played with it. We put it in an absurd approach, and we just showed this guy in a series of like 7 short videos how he couldn't catch a break no matter what came his way. So let me run one. I think it's also good to look at how this applies to other areas, not just the CDO area. So we came up with this concept where, what would a squirrel do with data governance? How would a squirrel operate that? And we started off with this idea of a squirrel all hands meeting that we'll get into. All right, so let me just show you here. This is a CDO. There's a squirrel all hands. I ended up having to cut that slide, and I hated that. I love that slide. We just didn't have time to put it in there. But anyway, here's the video. He begins his journey with determination, with absolute certainty, with conviction. He'll risk his life to cross the street, driven only by a primordial instinct to survive. In an analyst report forecasting more nuts across the road. But at his sojourn's midpoint, doubt swoops in like a red-tailed hawk on a 2-week cleanse. He hesitates, questioning his own cost-benefit analysis. Is crossing the road even worth the risk? What if there are actually more trees and nuts on this side? Were there parsing errors? What if I made a mistake? But what if the squirrel could pool all the wisdom of his entire organization, leveraging resources to ensure accurate information to avoid chasing unprofitable ventures? As a team, they could collaborate to find ways to mitigate risk and bring in the perfect fit resources to send the team into the right direction. All they need is a forecast they can believe in. Alas, that can never happen. Squirrels don't know PowerPoint. So, thank you. I assume that's for the squirrel's performance. We got some B-roll on there and of the squirrel, but then we also, I think you just have to get to a point where you're going to expect good things to happen, that things are going to work out. And we get to the part to shoot that thing, and we look out and I said, there's a squirrel. And so I told our camera guy, I said, can you get him? And he goes and pops out his camera and chases a squirrel down the street. And it was wonderful. We didn't think we'd get footage, but it worked out. It worked out. So, but that shows, look, we're taking a light approach, but at the same time, we're being serious about, look, we understand your problem, as a chief data officer, that you're having a hard time explaining this to people. And I hope this will work and maybe helping people look at it and maybe understand the issues a little bit more. So let me share one other example here, and then I want us to do a quick exercise to come up with ideas with juxtaposition. But this is one that my friend Todd did. This is not B2B. It's just something he was annoying his daughter with. And but one thing you can do here is you make your product, you create a parody of a story that you might know very well, like a Cinderella or something like that. We did a Cisco one with Helen of Troy. Well, I love anachronism. I love looking at taking your product and solving like a historic problem with your current product. And we did this. We took some Cisco product and showed how you could communicate and get more people than 1,000 ships to help Helen of Troy. Anyway, that's a fun way to kind of come up with a simple idea. But this is what my friend Todd did it was a while back. He did this just as a little funny video before the Star Wars movie, Force Awakens.
There has been an awakening. Can you feel it?
Stop.
Can you feel it?
Stop. Get out.
Yes. Give in to your hatred. Your anger has made you powerful. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bacon. Breakfast in 5.
Get out.
Right.
All right, see, that was so simple to do. I mean, Todd Wilkerson, he's a funny guy for sure, and he can come up with ideas like this pretty easily. But, all you need is a teenager and a lightsaber, and you can shoot that thing. But you could even do something like this and use it for the brand. There'd be a way to power that back to some power system or something. It doesn't have to be on the nose connected, but you just tie it together with a funny tagline and then link people to your blog. And I think this is a great way to, I'd also when you go take your improv class, you're going to build your community. You're going to meet a bunch of improvisers who spend their life just coming up with ludicrous ideas like this. And again, say, hey, look, would you come and work with us and come up with some ideas, and we'll shoot it for you. Again, going back to the college, if you go to a film school or just a college with a communications department, they have all this amazing gear that the students get to use for free. They're just looking for a place to apply it, and they're very grateful for that. So I'd love it if everybody kind of takes it as a to-do to go back and meet with a professor at a nearby college, and if you have an improv place nearby, not stand-up comedy, but improv, then go explore that idea too with them. So let's do a quick exercise, juxtaposition, and this is another improv and a comedy writing exercise. So I'm going to ask you all that what it is taking two completely unrelated ideas and looking and see if we can find a pattern that connects them that leads us to a storyline. So just yell out loudly, raise your hand, maybe not all at the same time, all right? But let me have a suggestion. What's that? Patents, there you go. Another one where the comedy writes itself. It's hilarious. Okay, so patents. Let me have another suggestion. In a person, place, or thing. Not Harry Potter. Okay, perfect. So that's awesome. So first, let's start with what you do is you take the idea of patents, and I really like using a pen and paper, and because I like keeping my hand moving. I like keeping the pen on the paper. That kind of helps me not stop, not quit. But let's start with patents, and what we do is we first just look at the attributes or the thing. It's like a word association. What do you think of when you think of patents? Law, lawyers, paperwork. Einstein, great. Boring documents. Okay. Illustrations. Oh, those are all great. Now help me remember these, because I don't even know what the suggestion was anymore. But like Einstein, if we took Einstein and then we started playing with ideas off of Einstein, what do you think of when you think of Einstein? Yes, exactly. Crazy hair. Formulas, relativity. Yeah. Write all those ideas too. This is like webbing. Has anybody used webbing as a creative exercise, a brainstorming technique where you just, you write down Einstein and then you draw a line off and you do crazy hair and you circle that and then you write supercuts or barbershop and then that gets you to the actors in barbershop, and you go from there. So, okay, we got patents. Everybody remember all that stuff? And then the next one was Harry Potter. I'm so proud of myself remembering that. Harry Potter, what do you think of when you think of Harry Potter? Wand. What was that? Magic. There you go. Wizardry. Lightning bolt, louder. Hogwarts. Okay, great. All right. So think about this group of ideas and then this group of ideas over here, and see if you can find a connection with the two. So, like for example, patent. I would think of, and I haven't seen the Harry Potter movies. I just haven't gotten to it yet. All right. It just wasn't, an interest. If my kids get into it, then I'm all over it. But they just haven't gotten there. But I think about a patent on one of. The process of trying to patent, like they got a flying broom, right? What was the game that they played? Thank you. All right. So I did see the internship program, right, with yes, at Google. Yes. All right. I saw that movie because I love Owen Wilson. Okay. So Quidditch. Think about we have a scene where somebody is going to meet with an IP attorney. Intellectual property, to patent the game Quidditch or maybe the broom that you fly on, okay? And what you do is you just take actually what happens in one of those conversations. Like you could actually you could Google transcripts for like an IP hearing, a public hearing, and go get the court transcript. And then you take that verbatim, and then you just plug in Harry Potter as whatever the defendant or whatnot, the plaintiff, and then Quidditch and those kind of things. Does that make sense? Okay, it shouldn't, but I'm glad you guys are on board. But that's what you do, and then you just explore the idea and think about the scene and how that might evolve, and then maybe you get to a point where you can say something at the end or put a tagline at the end, and then link back to your blog on this. Okay. You want to do another one? Okay. What's that? Idea, suggestion. Monkeys? Monkeys? Can't be monkeys, sorry. And monkeys is perfect, thank you. All right, so we have monkeys, and then let me have another one, a person, place, or thing. What? Dan? Hot dogs? Okay. The monkeys. There you go. That's kind of related. Let's go with hot dogs. No offense. But we can do the monkeys as one of off of the monkeys. So monkeys, let's do that again. All right. What do you think of when you think of monkeys? Bananas. Right. The number one answer, like on Family Feud. Okay. The bananas. 97. Okay. What else? Yes, Davy Jones, and then who just passed away last week? Yeah. So now that makes me think of funeral and pallbearer, casket. It's funny when you do improv, you'll be surprised how many scenes end up being about death. A lot of them do, and it's just because it's on our mind somewhere, Okay, so we have a few things for monkeys, and then what was the other one? Hot dogs. That's right. Okay, thank you. All right, what do you think of hot dogs? Baseball. Mustard. Summer, Chicago. Okay, great. White Sox. Yes. And you just keep going. And Babe Ruth, he just popped in my mind. He doesn't have anything to do with, I don't have to show you how I got there, but these ideas they'll pop in your mind. Now I'm thinking of the Harrison Ford movie that was filmed in Chicago. Love that movie. Fugitive, yeah. So you got all these over here with hot dogs, and then we got the monkeys over here. Can you think of a connection, how we could connect? What's that? What'd you say, Ashley? There you go. Oh, like the fugitive. That's great. I love that. I can see the parade, yes. I want to check every monkey house, outhouse, dog house. I love that one. Yeah, you could just simply put the monkey in the role of Harrison Ford and see where that takes you. Okay, and then that may inspire you to say, let's put the monkey in other roles. Let's it could be Han Solo. Let's put him in as Witness. I love that movie too. I like a Man Crush. I'm going to say it. Harrison Ford. I don't mind. Absolutely. So look, but the idea is, listen, 2 minutes ago we started with a blank page. Okay, how many times do you get so frustrated when you start with a blank page and you're like, I got nothing? And if you just take a couple of ideas and start playing around with those, you'll come up with some new things very quickly. Okay. Now, if you can't get a room of 809,000 people together like this, go to there's a tool called Random Word Generator. You can go there online, or you can also get an app, and you put in how many numbers of words you want it to generate, and it'll do that for you, and then you start playing. But here's the deal. I promise you, if you'll spend 5 minutes every morning playing around with this, that in 30 days, you're going to become a heck of a lot more creative. Your mind starts to say, you know what, I can come up with good ideas, and you'll come up with great things. And they don't all have to be funny, but it's just going to help you to be a lot more creative. So I think that's it. Look, actually, let me show you one other thing real quick, and then we're going to go to the award show. Well, I'll do it right here, okay? All right, so I think a very easy place to start is with captions. I just want to show you a couple of captions here that I wrote. I love starting. I like this because we already have an Instagram account. We already have all these photos, and you have stuff to start with. And if you don't, you can practice just by Googling photo of the day and go to one of these pages like USA Today and look at their photos and try to write funny captions for them. And one thing you do is here's one. This is my daughter. We were on a canoe trip, and I couldn't find anything funny there, but I remembered something that happened that day that I built off of. We saw like 4 or 5 different bald eagles, and it really was fascinating. And so I wrote about that. I wrote, paddling through the state forest, we spotted 4 bald eagles and one with a pretty bad comb over. This was a video shoot up in, a Voice of the Customer video shoot we did up in like 700 kilometers north of Montreal. It was minus 40 degrees that day. It was horrible. And you're walking to breakfast, and then you see this sign, and nobody tells you this. And you're like, oh my gosh. And so I wrote here, warning, beware of bears making announcements. And that's just looking at it and seeing, hey, could this be something else than what it actually is? All right, this was in the Amsterdam airport. They had some of the museum pieces set up there. And I wrote here, waited here for 10 minutes before I realized it wasn't a Cinnabon. Now, there's a lot of truth in that. I actually didn't wait. I could see it was a museum. But so many times I do things where I feel so stupid about what I've done and just completely missing something. And so there's a bit of vulnerability there, but it's hidden with humor. So anyway, look, send me a note if you have any questions. We're going to go to the awards show now. But I'm Tim at timwasher.com. And one thing I'd be happy to do this if you have if you send me like a one or two sentences and say, look, here's our product, and this is the problem that we solve for customers, I'd be glad to, give me some time, give me a day or so, and I'll shoot back a note with a absurd idea, concept for a video. I'd be happy to do that. And if you have any other questions, again, please send them to me. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.